It's the 25th annual Tribute to Trailblazers Hall of Fame, presented by the Kansas African American Museum. Tonight, we shine a light on the extraordinary Kansans whose vision, courage, and creativity have shaped our culture, unified communities, and uplifted future generations, trailblazing paths for others to follow. It's with pleasure that we honor Kia Duggins, a visionary advocate and educator lighting the path for future generations. Eva Jesse, a pioneering choral director and cultural icon who elevated African American music globally. Harold Miller, a civic leader and catalyst for inclusive community development. Dr. Marvin Lee Pelton, an academic trailblazer and transformational higher education leader. And Adrian Griffin, a professional athlete and mentor championing empowerment through sports. And our MC for tonight's showcase, the incomparable Felicia Rolfe.
Everyone, and welcome to the 25th Annual Trailblazers Hall of Fame. I'm Felicia Rolfe, and I am so honored to guide you through tonight's celebration of legacy, progress, and unity. Now, each year, the Kansas African American Museum proudly lifts up voices and stories that have shaped our communities, and in this milestone year, we reflect on what it means to be rooted in resilience and rising in unity. These words are more than just a theme. They are a testament to the strength, vision, and determination of the African American experience here in Kansas and beyond. Now, tonight's honorees embody the museum's values of art, history, education, and culture. They are visionaries, innovators, and leaders whose journeys continue to inspire. So tonight, we're broadcasting from the heart of Wichita at a museum built on the sacred foundation of Calvary Baptist Church, home to legends like Gwendolyn Brooks, Chester I. Lewis, Oscar Michaud, and of course, our own Barry Sanders, whose roots and impact have extended well beyond Kansas soil. Their legacy lives on through every story we tell. So, let's open tonight with the performance that captures the spirit of the stories that we are about to hear. Please welcome Paris Jane and Maurice Anthony with Crazy. you, Paris and Maurice. That was absolutely moving. We now welcome Shane Carter. He's the new guy in town, the new executive director of the Kansas African American Museum. He's going to share a few words about the institution's journey and its vital role in preserving and sharing our story.
Hello, I'm Shane Carter, Executive Director of the Kansas African American Museum, and I am thrilled to serve in this role for the museum. TKAAM's legacy has been more than a century in the making. Calvary Baptist Church, built back in 1917, was a cornerstone of Wichita's black community. Built by hand with pride by its members after long days of work. That same spirit lives in our museum today. We are rooted in resilience and we rise in unity. We invite you to engage with us, to tell your story and discover the many narratives that connect past, present, and future through art, history, education, and culture. We invite you to visit the mural at our future home at 201 North Main and add your voice to the story.
Thank you, Shane, new TKAAM Executive Director. Well, your words remind us how deeply our stories are rooted in communities that worked tirelessly, dreamed boldly, and laid the groundwork for generations. Now, tonight's honorees are living branches of that tree, stretching upward, reaching outward, rising in unity to inspire us all. Let's now celebrate our 2025 honorees, beginning with a moving tribute to this year's Doris Kerr Larkin's Rising Star Award recipient. Please welcome TKAAM board member Joseph Shepard.
Thank you, Felicia. Tonight, I have the bittersweet honor of presenting the 2025 Doris Kerr Larkin's Rising Star Award posthumously to Kia Duggins. Kia was a fearless advocate, an impassioned educator, and a rising leader whose presence sparked hope and action in everyone she touched. A graduate of East High School and Wichita State University, Kia went on to serve as a policy intern for First Lady Michelle Obama, a Fulbright scholar in Taiwan, and a civil rights attorney with the Civil Rights Corps in Washington, D.C. She recently accepted a faculty position at Howard University and was set to begin teaching this fall. We tragically lost Kia earlier this year in the heartbreaking D.C. helicopter collision that claimed the lives of many. Yet, even in her absence, her light continues to guide us, rooted in resilience, rising in unity. It is with deep respect and heartfelt emotion that I accept this award on her behalf.
When she was 2 years old, she told me, "Mommy, God wants me to dance." And so we put her in ballet. You were supposed to be 4 when you start ballet, but I found a teacher who said, "Let her come to class and we'll see." And Kia was way more focused than the girls older than her, and so she did ballet for 16 years. Danced on point, and several African American girls ended up taking ballet because they saw Kia take ballet. When she started, she was the only African American. And by the time we left the studio, there were numerous African American girls taking ballet. And she taught ballet to African American girls in our community as well.
I would describe Kia as equal parts fun and fierce. She knew that you can't change the world without a fight, but she also knew that to keep anyone anywhere doing anything, you had to have fun, you had to feel connected with them, and you had to do the work with love.
Kia was born and raised in Wichita. She is our oldest daughter.
She's our firstborn. And part of that is in her name, Kia, which seasons beginning, or new beginnings. So that was intentional.
That's literally what her name means, is seasons beginning in Swahili. So it's both Afrocentric and we just love the meaning. And I just knew that God was going to use her to do amazing things in both our bloodlines, and it turned out to be true.
She's very, very, very inquisitive, always questioning things, always looking for answers, a very caring heart, so always trying to figure out how she can help someone else.
She was reading chapter books by first grade, so yes, she was a very avid reader, and again, I think it just speaks to her inquisitive nature and wanting to know about the world around her. When they were small, every day when I dropped them off at school, I would always say to them the scripture, Luke 12:48, to whom much is given, and they would be like, we know, Mom, much is required. So that is part of how they were raised, and also in our church. And I would say her biggest hero was Michelle Obama. First time she saw her during the Democratic National Convention, she was 13, and she fell in love with her and wanted to be Michelle Obama, wanted to be just like Michelle Obama, I should say.
She was also inspired by Condoleezza Rice. She wanted at one point to be Secretary of State, and so she wanted to actually get into that position where she can go out and help change the world by helping a lot of the underdeveloped countries become more economic powers.
My students call me Professor Kate. However, majority of my former students, especially students in this group that I mentor, called Barton International Group, they all call me Mama Kate, including Kia in her senior year in high school when she was competing for Barton Scholarship during the competitions. That was the first time I met Kia. So Kia was not necessarily like being all out there. She just carried herself as herself, Kia Duggins. However, don't mistaken nice silence and casually, being herself. When she opened up her mouth, that is where the impact come from. This is someone that is beyond her age.
We are staying on top of a major breaking news story near Reagan National Airport. A massive search and rescue operation underway right now after a passenger plane collided midair with an Army Black Hawk helicopter, crashing into the Potomac River below. This was just before 9 o'clock last night.
When I met Kia, I was really taken aback by how lovely and bright and warm she was, as she felt like an old friend immediately. It's no surprise to me that Kia went to Harvard because she was brilliant and she understood that power doesn't give you a seat at the table, you have to take it. She was a brilliant litigator who developed novel theories to defend our clients' constitutional rights, and she was a beautifully adept organizer who knew how to bring people together around a common goal.
Kia was one of the intricate people in Eastern Tennessee to get the Hamilton County suit back in September 21st, 2023, where individuals was not getting proper due process rights when they go in front of the magistrate. Kia was the first person that brought it to us to let us know that, hey, individuals supposed to have legal representation, legal counsel when they go in front of the magistrate, and she let us know that individuals' constitutional rights are being broken.
Kia decided that she wanted to go to Harvard because one of the things she said is people don't listen to women of color, especially Black women, but maybe if I get a degree from Harvard, it may give me a little more clout and people may be willing to listen to what I have to say. Kia also started a nonprofit when she was 20 years old. It's called the Princess Project. And when she was small, someone told her princesses aren't brown. And so her response as an adult was to start a nonprofit called the Princess Project, which works with underrepresented girls and gives them the social capital and the tools that they need to succeed in life. And so one of our goals to keep her legacy alive is to continue her nonprofit.
Also, too, in her past, she was working as an intern for Michelle Obama, and she dealt with Let Girls Learn initiative. That's another program that she was a part of. So she's an inspiration for other young youth to be able to show them that just because others may feel like you can't do something, whatever you put your mind to, you can do it.
Also, Fulbright, she touched my heart. She came in one day. She said, "Okay, I want to try for Fulbright." I said, "Okay." So of course I had to help her, you had to recommendations and all that. And then she came back. She said, "Okay, I got in." And guess which country I picked? She said, "I picked Taiwan." I was so shocked. I said, "Why Taiwan?" She said, "Because that's where you from. I want to get to know your culture and your countries." I have a picture of us, over there. She's very passionate about uplifting social justice, and because she's seen, a lot. And that's why when she was at WSU, she actually is the first student to even pay that close attention and identify that there's a lot of food insecurity among international students.
She literally had friends from all walks of life, from the highest exec to the man on the street, literally. She was giving her neighbors food or using her bus pass to help other people get on the train in DC. And so I do think that her love of people is the thing that has touched so many lives, and we saw that at her service. And so it is really beautiful, and I think it's a beautiful picture of the way the world is supposed to be.
We would like to thank Robert Brogdon Automotive as our Hall of Fame sponsor for the evening.
Thank you, Joseph. Now, Kia's story reminds us that impact knows no timeline. We all know her light shines on, resilient at the root, and bold in the bloom. Now we honor a legendary figure whose legacy in music and activism resonates across decades. A native Kansan, her voice elevated African-American choral music to new heights. Introducing our next posthumous Trailblazer honoree, Dr. Eva Jessie, presented by past TKAAM board president and current board member, Ebony S. Clements.
Good evening, everyone. I am Ebony S. Clements, immediate past president of our Kansas African American Museum. It is my privilege to honor the incomparable Dr. Eva Jessie, composer, conductor, published author, humanitarian, and Kansas native. Dr. Jessie was the first African American woman to gain international acclaim as a professional choral conductor. Her choir performed alongside legends from the opera stage in Porgy and Bess to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial during the March on Washington. As an ambassador of the arts, her legacy is remembered not only through her professional accomplishments, but through her commitment to service, scholarship, and social progress. It is a privilege and a great honor to present this award posthumously on behalf of Dr. Eva Jessie.
I think when I reflect on the life of Dr. Jessie, I think about her innate ability to follow her passion, to follow her calling, regardless of what was viewed as the norm, regardless of what many people have tried to put in her way or roadblocks.
And Eva Jessie was very passionate about showing that spirituals, jazz, the music of her people was so deeply important to America's fabric.
I think it's interesting when we think about Dr. Jessie's upbringing in the state of Kansas, having a sense of unity and having a sense of resilience, because when we think of Kansas as a whole, being part of the Underground Railroad and having connections with welcoming our brothers and our sisters, I believe that it was part of her own upbringing, her family and the folks, her community, teaching at Pitt State and wanting to make sure that she kept those Kansas connections and those roots.
Coffeyville, Kansas in 1890s. Of course, we think of it today as a small town, but in that time, it was served by railroads, had an opera house, had a black newspaper. So she would have been exposed to almost every touring African-American performer of the day. Fisk Jubilee singers, as well as all the other Jubilee singers, they would have come through Coffeyville. Because Coffeyville, I had read that it was maybe one of the, what they refer to as principal towns for African Americans.
Well, spirituals is a musical idiom that comes from slavery, using music as a source of inspiration, as a source of strength. But it was also sometimes used as coded messages. It was used as a way to communicate, so that way the slave master didn't understand when you said swing low sweet chariot, you're really talking about, hey, meet me tonight and we're gonna, go down the Underground Railroad and we're gonna escape. But in spirituals, you get a lot of musical elements that you see in other genres, such as gospel music, blues, rock and roll, and musical elements like call and response, where you have a leader and then you have a congregation or a group of people that will echo you. Or you have sense of body percussion, whether it's clapping or stomping. And a lot of those things were improvised. And improvisation you see in jazz and other things. And so the use of the spiritual, which is really American folk music, has permeated other genres.
And she was bringing together all of these different composers and their works and her own original works and scripture and different things in these really brilliant ways to tell the stories that she wanted to tell. So, when you think of a Western classical composer, immediately you're going to think of like Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, Brahms. In her world, like somebody who might have kind of bridged some of those gaps in her day, George Gershwin, who she ended up working with. But ultimately, he brought Eva Jesse on board for his opera or musical, depending on how you want to look at Porgy and Bess. He brought Eva Jesse in to that conversation, and she really made sure that the music that George Gershwin wrote actually reflected Black culture.
I don't know that people realized how influential she was on the culture and entertainment. Being on the radio really early with her choir, and this was maybe in an era before they're doing things like Oscars and Emmys. And I know that she received several honorary degrees, so there were those. And I believe in the 1980s, the governor of Kansas, John Carlin, made her an ambassador for the arts.
She knew all the best singers. So in that day and age, if you were going to have the March on Washington and you needed a choir and you needed a choral director and you needed to carry on with the spirituals, which was the tradition of protest music in those days, and I think Eva Jesse would have been the most obvious person in that day.
Thank you, Mr. Randolph. I would simply like to say that I think this has been one of the great days of America. And I think this march will go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, demonstrations for freedom and human dignity ever held in the United States.
It's not just about the music, it's about these memories that she had with her grandmother and her aunts who raised her. And in the oratorios and these cantatas that she would compose, oftentimes they weren't works that she was literally notating every single note herself and composing herself.
One of the things that she fought for African American musicians and for singers all over is that they needed to be paid for rehearsing. And that was one of her big contributions to the music industry.
1936. She was performing, I believe, with the choir at the National Theater in Washington, D.C., and it was segregated. And she refused to do the performance unless they integrated the audience, and they did.
This year we're celebrating 130th anniversary of her birth. Given the state of our world today, I think that the need for songs like We Shall Overcome is still prevalent because there is so much divisiveness. There are so many things that people look to try to separate us. And when you think of we shall overcome, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. It is talking to the idea that I look at you as my brother, as my sister, as someone whom I value, regardless of how different we may be, because there's a lot more that really connects us. And I think even more so, we have to continue to sing songs that preach that teach that, because it is through that we change hearts and minds.
We would like to thank Meritrust Credit Union as our heritage sponsors for the evening.
Welcome and good evening. As we reflect on the powerful legacies celebrated tonight, we invite you to be a part of continuing this vital work. The Kansas African American Museum depends on the generosity of individuals like you to preserve history, elevate culture, and inspire future generations through education and storytelling. Whether it's a one-time contribution or ongoing support, every gift helps ensure that the Kansas African American experience, past and present, has a home to be honored and shared. Visit TKAAM.org to donate, volunteer, or become a member. Together, we are history, we are legacy, we our culture.
Ted and Ebony, thank you. Dr. Eva Jesse's story reminds us that even when we're no longer here, our voices can still rise. Well, we now invite Dr. Gretchen Ike, TKAAM board member, to introduce our next honoree, a true pioneer in the aviation community, Mr. Harold Miller, whose groundbreaking work and unwavering commitment paved new paths for so many. And here to present this year's Trailblazer, Dr. Ike.
Hello, I'm Dr. Gretchen Castle Ike, Professor of History, author, and TKAAM board member. It's a true honor to introduce a man who has been a first in so many ways and who turned those firsts into pathways for others. Harold Miller made history as the first African American director of air traffic control at Wichita's Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport, breaking barriers in an industry where representation was long overdue. He didn't just step into that role. He excelled, he mentored, and opened doors for those who would follow. Tonight we honor his courage, his vision, and the lasting impact he's made in aviation and beyond. Please join me in celebrating this year's Trailblazer, Harold Miller.
There are several unsung heroes in our industry. There's a lot of people who work for the airport authority behind the scenes you never see. There's guys in the truck that are clearing snow. They're on the mowers taking care of grass. And we've got the air traffic controllers that you never see either. They're in that tower, they're keeping an eye out. They're looking at the radar, they're looking out the window, they're talking to all the pilots. So they're doing everything out there to keep that flow occurring, keep the safe operation going. So when you go to travel out of the airport, it's seamless for you because of all those unsung heroes and their activities that they're doing behind the scenes.
Airplanes are moving at 250 miles an hour when we're working them, and at the time it's usually a snap decision. You got to be able to shut off your problems at home and keep your mind focused entirely on air traffic control. So there's a lot into this, and Harold had to overcome a tremendous amount of that.
He comes from great stock, he truly does. Even what he's doing today, as far as working at the church and just being such a great volunteer, we appreciate his accomplishments and look forward to more.
My name is Harold Miller, and I am a former postal employee. Went to the post office right after I was discharged from the Navy. And from the post office, I went to air traffic control in the FAA. With my service time that I had in the Navy, I had a government time of 34 years and 4 months. Well, I had a good childhood, And this is my home. I was born and raised here in Wichita, Kansas. And I was born in a home in the 400 block home on Water Street. So a friend of mine heard me say that at a talk I was giving one time, said, "Man, you walk on water." I said, "Yeah, I walked on water for a lot of years."
Harold, I thought, was very well dressed in junior high school. He was always neat and presented himself very well.
For one thing, a facility, he had to overcome everything getting there. And then, when he got there, he had to have the respect of the people that were there to move on.
The day that I went for the interview, it was cold. It was a storm. And the airport was closed and traffic wasn't moving very well in the city. So there I am sitting there waiting on him to come in. When he saw me, I wish you could see the look on his face. It was like, well, I knew he was coming, but why is he here? And then when we went talking about doing the interview, he was asking me about my education, and I told him. And he asked me if I had done this in the service, and I said, no, I have no idea about it at all. And he said, well, what makes you think you can do this job that these guys are doing? Because these guys have done it in the service. And I said, I don't care what they've done in the service. And I don't care what they're doing here, as long as, I get a chance to maybe do this job. And he said, well, there's a guy up here who kind of sets the tone when it comes to dressing. He said, and the guys like to try to keep up with him. I said, well, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that either. And so he said, okay. And I was told there's a 50% washout rate in this. So you might as well know that it's not an easy job. And so I thought, I don't have a problem with that. And then he told me, he said, this school is going to be at the academy down in Oklahoma City. It's 9 weeks long. He said, are you married? I said, yes, I am. He said, how long have you been married? And at that time, we'd been married like 4 years, a little over. And I told him, that's not a problem. He said, well, like I said, it's 9 weeks long. It can be a problem with a marriage. You can be away from your wife that long. I said, what are you trying to say? He said, I just want you to be prepared. I said, no. What you're telling me is, you don't think my marriage is strong enough to endure this. And I said, I don't know what kind of wife you have. I know what kind of wife I have. And I am not worried about what you're talking about. And he looked at me, he said, okay. Then he wanted me to go meet the deputy chief.
I would definitely say the way he lives his life in servitude. And I have to start with his family. He has 3 children and his beautiful wife. They've been married for decades, and they really are a very special couple. And the fact that he is the first black man to direct airplanes at a Wichita terminal is amazing. My dad worked for the FAA, and so I knew this growing up. And then I thought, I need to do a story on Mr. Miller. He's such a trailblazer, what he's already, accomplished.
And now, at our stage of life, he is trying to influence young people to reach out, set some goals, and try and succeed in it. And he said, don't make them small, make them big. Go get your education, or whether it's 2 years, 4 years, whatever, and then pursue your dream. He said, that's all I did.
There's a lot of trailblazers in our industry, and people trailblaze in different ways. Sometimes the trailblazing is just culturally and being there and having that presence. So it's an honor to be a part of this effort and recognizing such a great trailblazer, because he truly has made an impact.
And when I made supervisor, they asked me, said, we want you to do this. And that's when I found out that I was the first black to control airplanes here in Wichita, to control tower. And that's when I found that I was the first black in the central region to be appointed supervisor in the terminal option. So that made me feel good, But I never thought that I would rise to the point to where I'm being recognized like now.
When you're talking about giving back, or somebody who has just made an incredible difference in our lives, and that young people can aspire to do the kinds of things that he has done, I think about Gordon Parks, another trailblazer. He says, The guy who takes a chance, who walks between the known and the unknown, who is not afraid to fail, will succeed. And that is Mr. Harold Miller, and we're so glad that he is a 2025 Trailblazer.
I'd like to thank the Kansas African American Museum for this honor. It's really a privilege to be able to be here at this time. I also like to thank my wife and family. Without them, this would not be achievable. But if you believe it, you can achieve it. Thank you so much, African American Museum. Thanks again and again. I appreciate it.
We would like to thank Evergy, our honorary sponsor for the evening.
Rooted in resilience, rising in unity. The future was bright, and the sun rose over Kansas. Exodusters believed that. John Henry Van Lew didn't start as one of the largest property owners in Wichita, black or white. He actually started out as a humble minister and joined the Baptist ministry. Businesses boomed, and at last Van Lew started the Van Lew Real Estate Company. The land he owned eventually became the Sedgwick County Courthouse and other county buildings. His office building was a starting point for Jackson Mortuary, which started as an ambulatory service, which is another word for an ambulance service, and is a multi-generational business still in existence today. Sadly, Van Lew died prematurely in 1923. He left behind his wife Julia, their 13 children, and a lasting legacy of resilience and a unified community.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Kansas African American Museum 2025 Tribute, the Trailblazers Award Program. Now, our next Trailblazer reminds us that resilience often begins with discipline and that unity is built through leadership and teamwork. His path from player to professional coach is one paved with perseverance and heart. To introduce our next Trailblazer, please welcome Amy Williams.
Hello, I'm Amy Williams, past interim president of TKAAM. It is my distinct honor to introduce Adrian Griffin and his story. Adrian has been a trailblazer in sports, leadership, and mentorship. A Wichita native and East High School state champion, go Aces, Adrian's story spans continents and courts. From playing 9 seasons in the NBA to coaching elite teams, including the Raptors to their first championship. Alongside his athletic excellence, Adrian earned a PhD in organizational leadership, proving that true leadership takes both strength and scholarship. He continues to inspire with every step he takes, both on and off the courts. With that, I give you Adrian's story.
This is 1991-92. Going into the season, East had been 2 wins away from a Class 6A championship, and East plays South again. East had not beaten South both times during the season, so could they get it done this time? South had, I believe, 3 future Division I players on that team. East had Adrian. He led them to that victory. And then the next night, they have to come back and beat a Shawnee Mission West team. But Adrian comes out, and in the first minute, he makes a 3-pointer, and that kind of makes you think, okay, he's gonna have a big game. They're leading comfortably at the end of the first half. 1 more possession before halftime. Adrian takes the ball and acts like a point guard and just stops at the top of the key and calmly just busts another 3-pointer. And that's when you kind of figured, okay, he's going to get it done tonight. They're going to win their state title, first for the school in 20 years. So if you ever needed confirmation that Adrian was going to be a star to come out of Kansas, and wherever he decided to go to school at that point, that he was going to be a good Division I player, that was the confirmation right there.
He was very active, and I think mainly what really motivated him was being a preacher's kid. At first, he couldn't be outside because my husband was kind of strict, and while the other boys were out playing ball at first, him and his older brother, they had to do a book report every week. My husband would give them a scripture, they had to study it, and then they had to make a book report. And then that went on all through grade school. And he kind of eased up on them when they got in high school. And then that's when he started focusing on basketball.
Adrian, he is a connector. People like to be around him. And he's been a very positive guy. His dad was a preacher back at home, and he finds a way to communicate with people that makes them feel good about themselves. So I think that that's an inspiration not only to Kansans, but to people all over the world.
What always struck me about Adrian in high school was that he was not only humble, but he was a smart player, did the right things on the court. He wouldn't jack up a three-pointer, he would make the best plays. So he was obviously a smart player. He continued that at Seton Hall. And then he starts this path where he was in professional basketball for 9 years. Now, if you talk to most people about professional basketball for 9 years, they would say, wow, he had a great NBA career. He had not even reached the NBA yet. He went to Europe, he went to overseas, he played in the Continental Leagues here in the US.
Well, after I did not get drafted, I was at home watching the draft actually. And after the draft, my dad, he saw how down I was, and he said, hey, let's go for a drive. And this is around 12:30 at night, and we're driving around the outskirts of Wichita, Kansas for about 30 minutes. And he hasn't said a word to me, but we finally get to a red light, and he stops, and he turns to me and says, son, don't give up on your dream. God told me you're gonna make the NBA. And I went from being really down to having hope, and that's what he gave me. So it wasn't an easy path. The next thing I know, I did get drafted, but it was by the CBA, which was a minor league team in Connecticut. And the CBA years were tough. It was gritty. It was long bus rides, playing in small gyms, but that's where I got to hone my talent, and that's where I learned hard work.
For a professional player to become an NBA player after 9 years of toiling overseas, toiling in what we call the G League these days, is pretty remarkable. And then to have another 9-year career in the NBA after that, that's amazing.
Adrian has a poker face. You never know when things are going great for him. You never know when things aren't going so well. And it's a tribute to him. He's an even-keeled guy, and those types of people always seem to do best under pressure.
It's about perseverance with him, too. He was an NBA assistant coach, and he went on to get his doctorate at the same time. Pretty incredible.
As an assistant coach, you have your role. It's a really defined role. It could be player development, working with players, or game planning. When I became the head coach of Milwaukee Bucks, it was a little bit of a shock because I dealt with more stuff off the court than on the court, as opposed to the X and O's. You have to make sure the relationships with the players are right. So you're spending time with them on and off the court. You have to build strong relationships with the front office and with the fans and the media and the community.
I mean, let's face it, he played with Dirk Nowitzki, started on the Dallas Mavericks team in 2006. He coached Giannis. He played with Andres Nocioni from Argentina. Luol Deng was on the Bulls when he was there from the Sudan. And I think that his experience, even coaching in Toronto, I think that he brings an international flavor, however you slice it.
Having my dad and my mom in the stands, watching me play my first game, that was really a special moment. And then winning the NBA championship with the Toronto Raptors in 2019, that was unbelievable to hold that trophy and be a part of that. And then becoming a head coach was also one of my ultimate dreams.
I am proud. God began to open other doors in ministry. He's been traveling, doing several speaking engagements. So we'll see. It's an exciting road.
When I left home and I started on this journey, I never thought of myself as a trailblazer. That was the last thing that was on my mind. But looking back over my career, I hope that I've inspired somebody else to dream big, to get out of their comfort zone. It's just so important, and take that next step and find a good support system, have people in your corner, and dream big, and you never know, where your dreams will take you. First, I want to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who makes all things possible. I definitely want to thank the Kansas African American Museum for this prestigious award. I am deeply honored. I want to thank my beautiful wife, Kathy, for all your love and support. And I want to thank my entire family, in particular my mother, who never ceases to amaze me with your strength and your grace. Lastly, I want to thank all the teachers, coaches, educators who have poured into my life over the years. I am deeply grateful. Thank you.
We would like to thank our legacy sponsor, Capital Federal.
Congratulations, Adrian. Well deserved. Your achievements rise like a beacon, grounded in perseverance, reaching ever upward. You remind us that resilience not only surviving hardship, but transforming it into momentum. Now, let's hear from our very own TKAAM board member, C. Edward Watson, for a capital campaign update on the progress of TKAAM's new location to come.
Hi, I'm C. Edward Watson, and as the current board chair, I am thrilled to share exciting news regarding the progress the Kansas African American Museum has made on its capital campaign, with the ultimate goal of transforming 201 North Main Street into our future home. Thanks to the incredible generosity of our donors and supporters, we've raised $6.1 million, a tremendous milestone, though our work continues. None of this would have been possible without our extraordinary board, our hardworking staff, and you, our committed partners and patrons. We remain focused on ensuring the renovation meets our goal of providing a world-class history, education, and cultural center highlighting the Kansas African American story. As we move ahead, we look forward to sharing more updates and to welcoming the leadership and input of our new Executive Director, Shane Carter, as we shape TKAAM's future. Together, we will create a space that honors history, celebrates African American achievement and culture, and inspires generations to come.
All right, thank you, Ed. We sure appreciate it. Our next honoree has nurtured institutions like a gardener tending a thriving orchard, making space for all to grow. Dr. Marvin Lee Pelton.
Greetings, I'm Denise Sherman, former Executive Director and current volunteer for the Kansas African American Museum, and it's my honor to present Dr. Marvin Lee Pelton as a 2025 Trailblazer. A Wichita native and first-generation college graduate, Dr. Pelton has led some of the nation's most respected institutions, from Willamette University to Emerson College, and now serves as the president of the Boston Foundation. His leadership, grounded in literature and lifted by justice, has made him a national voice for civic transformation and educational equity. Tonight, we celebrate a legacy built on purpose, power, and promise. Congratulations to Dr. Pelton.
In 1883, there's a young woman by the name of Emily Lazarus who wrote a poem whose lines that we remember. Give me your poor, give me your hungry. And I think what runs through my ancestral family is a deep humility, along with this commitment to something larger than ourselves.
I think of Midwestern values of humility, honesty, integrity, hard work. That is Lee Pelton. And I think that has infused who he is as a person and as a leader. And I think all Kansans should be very proud of their native son.
I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, with parents and 3 sisters. We grew up on what was called the north side of town, at the north end of Wichita, which is a small enclave of African American families and some Hispanic families, surrounded principally by white neighborhoods. 2 blocks away from us was another enclave of black families. Most of them went to principally black schools. I went to, and my sisters went to a school that was white for the most part. So I've always lived a sort of bifurcated life, one foot in a black neighborhood and another foot in the white world.
He grew up only a few blocks from the Wichita State campus, graduated from Wichita State, went to Harvard, taught at Harvard, has been honored as the top alum at Harvard this past year. He's just done more with his life than most of us have.
Point to a leader who is willing to take on the toughest challenges of the day or in our communities, and he's continued to demonstrate that as the leader of the Boston Foundation.
So Lee has been president of 2 colleges and the Boston Foundation, which is one of the largest community foundations in our country. And for each of those institutions, he's been the first African-American leader, which I think has been very important for those institutions to break that barrier.
So that's why he deserves to be honored, to be recognized, to be thanked for the difference he's making in this world.
I would say that, being the first takes a lot of courage, obviously, but what I think goes unsaid a lot more is that it also takes a lot of personal sacrifice, right? Because when you're the first, you become not just a person, but you become a symbol. And, there's a lot of weight to being a symbol. There is a lot of responsibility.
When I was president at Emerson College, after the murder of George Floyd, I wrote a little essay called America is on Fire, where I spoke personally about his murder, its impact on me, his impact on others, and how it was part of a larger racist narrative in America. Wrote it in a night, got published the next day, and then it was viewed by 6 million people around the world. 6 million people read that document. And it was my contribution to an awareness about the lives of Black Americans and the issues that they face and continue to face.
Lee is a visionary. He's an intellectual. He's compassionate. Even though he was an English literature major, he also is highly data-driven. But he has a love for the humanities and knows that a culture without humanities is not a well-defined culture.
Lee Pelton is really a leader with qualities that I really haven't seen before in other astounding leaders.
I think anybody who knows Lee thinks of him as a compassionate individual. He had very strong leadership as a president of Willamette and then Emerson College, where I see the manifestation of his compassion is in his current role at the Boston Foundation, one of the premier community foundations in our country.
My father is a trailblazer and has obviously accomplished a lot in his life and had a lot of big impacts on a lot of different communities, but I like to think about the way that he's a trailblazer in these communities in smaller ways.
I've been working in this field and space for many years, and I count Lee as one of my greatest mentors, and it has to do with how he shows up as a human-centered leader. He puts people and community in the center of all the choices and decisions he makes in his leadership.
I think his time at Emerson College was the first time in which his job as a leader was so intertwined with a city and seeing the way in which a city functions and doesn't function. And I think that's what really set him up for sort of his specific interests in working with the Boston Foundation.
Our aim is really to, as I like to say, improve lives and strengthen communities. And we do that in a variety of ways. We do it not only with our grant making, but we do it with our advocacy.
I mean, the things that I've seen and know of Dr. Pelton's history, it creates ability to dream what's possible, and I think as younger generations see Dr. Pelton leading with this courage that he has, they realize that they also can step into these big positions of leadership.
He's leading a monumental effort. And the way he is doing it, I think, is unique. in that he's bringing people from all sectors to make change. Now that model can be applied to any not-for-profit, of bringing people who are committed to a cause and giving strong leadership, being accountable with integrity on the use of the funds raised, and making sure that every dime works to make a difference.
I should be able to give back to those entities some sense of humanity and what it means to be human and to make life better. As someone just said, you know, when you leave this earth, you want to drop a little hole in the good. And I have been trying to do that all my life. I am honored and pleased to accept the Kansas African American Museum Trailblazers Award. It's really an honor for me to be inducted into this great society of Kansas leaders. I'm very humbled by this award. I've received many awards in my lifetime, both in this country and countries outside of the U.S. But this is really very special for me because it's Kansas. It's my hometown, it's my home place, and it is, despite years of absence, it is a place that I return to for nourishment and for how to live my life. So thank you very, very much.
We would like to thank Robert Brogdon Automotive as our Hall of Fame sponsor for the evening.
Now tonight, we've honored the brilliance of the African American experience through the lenses of art, history, education, and culture. These stories are branches of a greater whole, reaching toward light, grounded in truth. The Kansas African American Museum's mission is to make the Kansas African American experience resonate with every Kansan and through technology with the world. We're rooted in resilience. We are rising in unity. And we sure thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you back here next